We are looking at the sixth part of our views of Jeannette, Pennsylvania. This should be the last one. And I want to show you a little bit about Eliot Company and a few others like Shade and Novelty and Jeannette Glass. Eliot Company by the 1970s was the largest employer in Jeannette. It wasn't one of the first companies there, and it's not a glass company. Eliot Company started out in Pittsburgh doing things that were related to steam engines, steam boilers, steam engines. They made tubes, boiler tubes, and the equipment to clean boiler tubes. And in 1913, William Swan Elliott bought a property in Jeannette that had been founded as a glass factory. And in 1914, he started production at that property. And it's still there today with the name Elliott on it. This just shows you in the context of the city of Jeannette what we're looking at right here. This started out quite early, around the turn of the century, as Fort Pitt Glass, which didn't last too long, and a company that made electric fans moved in there, and that didn't last too long either, and that's the property that Elliott bought in 1913 where he put up his factory. This is a view from the late 1800s. It shows the original factory that was there before Elliott was there. This view is somewhat cut off. I want to apologize for not having a complete view, but this was the factory called Fort Pitt Glass. The name Dithridge also attached to it. This street here is still called Fort Pitt, and this street here is still called Dithridge. Those two names were applied to the first company that was there, the Glass Company. This gives you a picture of the footprint of Eliot Company today. This is Route 130 or Harrison Avenue going by, just to locate it. But you see how it's expanded. Even though Eliot Company started out doing products that related to steam engines and steam technology, they got into doing turbines, steam turbines, and then along the line they got into doing electric motors and compressors. By 1957, Carrier Air Conditioning decided they wanted Elliott because the air conditioners needed motors and they needed compressors, and Elliott did that stuff. So Elliott was purchased in 1957 by Carrier. And next we'll see a short video. It's less than 2 minutes, but it'll give you a picture of the Elliott property down there and something that was very close to it. We're up at Harrison Avenue in Jeannette, where 4th Street crosses. We're looking down at Eliot Company. And before Eliot Company was there was a glass company there, Fort Pitt. They made brass accoutrements for lamps and also lampshades and a number of other glass-related articles. And as we pan over Harrison Avenue, we come to see the other corner over there. Now, somewhere in that area was the original Klingensmith Fort, Fort Klingensmith, which was probably more like a fortified house rather than the kind of fort you see at Ligonier. But in 1781, the Indians, incited by the British who were fighting the colonists, they attacked the Klingensmith garrison over there. Between 20 and 30 people were there, and they killed most of them. 3 people escaped. Somewhere in that area that I'm shooting toward, and not exactly on any one of those houses, but it's just in that general area. Now this shows us what we were just looking at up here. This was the Elliott plant, and right diagonally across was the place where the Klingensmith massacre happened many years before, in 1781. The next thing we see will be down 4th Street. We go down 4th Street, down here to number 5. That was one of the other early glass plants in Jeannette. It became known as Jeannette Shade and Novelty Company. And this is what it looks like. It's still there. It's now called Specialty Glass Company, Jeannette Specialty. It's pretty old looking. Actually, some of those buildings were there more than 100 years ago. The place was founded around the beginning of the 1900s. They were making glass molds in the beginning, and then they got into other kinds of glass products. This is an early shade for an electric light. They also made shades and chimneys for the old gas lights. And this would have been novelty glass that they were doing, and other kinds of things. They had to do whatever they needed to do to keep the thing going. One of the things that they worked on producing was the advertisement that was put on top of the older gasoline pumps, which was a convex bit of round glass that had a logo or the name or the gasoline on it, and it was printed on with a silkscreen process, and they put on various ceramic glazes in different colors, and that could be fired in an annealing rather than a bending layer. They could be made quite a bit of them. The specialty company that's there now makes a number of things done with a kind of borosilicate glass, which makes products which are glass that are very, very durable. It's very resistant to fracture and scratching. Now this is where we were, right here. And now the next thing we look at will be down here, another one of the early plants. It was called Jeannette Glass. It showed up there about 1898. And this is a shot that was done shortly before it was torn down in the early 90s. They not only had a factory, they had some workers' housing that they built in the 20s. And this is an etching I did of the place, what it looked like in the 1920s. That's the photograph that I used as a basis for that etching. And that's what it looked like right around the time it was founded. This view was from 1897. The factory was just starting up. This is 4th Street over here, and Chambers Avenue coming down. You see it had a railroad siding coming over. They at first made bottles, containers, but then they got into making tableware. This is the kind of tableware that they were no doubt producing. This is pressed glass done in glass molds. A nice crystal compote bowl there. This is what we were just looking at, Jeannette glass. And the last thing we see will be something that was right up here. The railroad station, when it was in business, we might say. That was the old PRR station. And with that, we'll move on and say so long to Jeannette. And we'll see you again. Bye now.